Okay, so right now, a shadow war is brewing in the Caribbean, and it's pulling in global superpowers and putting millions of lives on the line. Today, we're going to break down this incredibly high-stakes confrontation between the United States and Venezuela.
And look, this isn't just some routine military exercise. What we're witnessing here is the largest deployment of U.S. military assets to this region since the Cuban Missile Crisis. That's a huge deal. It's a massive escalation that has put the entire hemisphere on notice.
So, just to give you a sense of the scale here, this thing, Operation Southern Spear, involves more than 15,000 U.S. troops. And that's not all. We're talking a whole fleet of naval warships and advanced aircraft, too. This is a major show of force, and it's all positioned right off Venezuela's coast. And make no mistake, this isn't just a passive deployment. U.S. forces have already conducted over 20 kinetic strikes. Now, that's military speak for attacks with live ammunition, real weapons, on vessels leaving Venezuelan ports. And this quote from the Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, really says it all. These strikes will continue day after day. So yeah, this is an ongoing, persistent military campaign. Okay, so all of this brings us to the really big questions, right? Why is all this happening now? What's driving this sudden escalation? And maybe most importantly, what does it all mean for the millions of people caught in the middle? The ordinary citizens and nations of the Caribbean who are stuck right in the center of this geopolitical storm. All right, Section 1, America versus Maduro. To really get what's going on, you have to understand that there are two completely different stories being told here, depending on who you ask. So, here's the official U.S. position. They've totally reframed their entire approach. The administration sent a confidential notice to Congress, basically saying the U.S. is now in a non-international armed conflict. Now, that might sound like a bunch of legal jargon, but this is an absolutely critical distinction. It means they're not treating this like a police action, which has all sorts of rules. Nope, they're calling it an armed conflict. This lets them label groups like the Cartel de los Soles, this powerful drug network supposedly run by Venezuelan officials, as unlawful combatants instead of just criminals. It's a whole different ballgame.
And what this does is create two completely separate realities. On one hand, you have the U.S. saying, hey, we're just conducting a targeted mission against narco-terrorists. But on the other hand, Venezuela is looking at this and saying, no way, this is a blatant provocation, a flimsy excuse for an illegal intervention to try and overthrow our government.
And the pressure here, it's getting intensely personal. The U.S. just doubled the bounty for any information that leads to Nicolas Maduro's capture. We're talking $50 million. That's a staggering amount of money. I mean, by putting a price on the head of a sitting president, the U.S. is really taking this beyond a normal state-to-state conflict. They're targeting Venezuela's leadership directly.
All right, Section 2, a web of alliances. Now, it's really important to remember this isn't just about the U.S. and Venezuela. Not by a long shot. Venezuela has been busy cultivating some very powerful allies, and they are now deeply involved, creating this incredibly complex web of global interests.
So first up, you've got China. Beijing is South America's top trading partner, and they've basically provided a crucial economic lifeline to the Maduro regime. We're talking over $120 billion in loans since 2005, plus massive investments in Venezuelan energy. So you can see China has a huge financial stake in making sure the current government survives. Any move by the U.S. that destabilizes things, well, that directly threatens Beijing's bottom line.
Then, of course, there's Russia. And for Moscow, it's not just about business, it's about political and diplomatic solidarity. Vladimir Putin even sent a personal letter to Maduro, and the message was clear. Venezuela will overcome all tests with dignity. It's a powerful signal to the rest of the world that Venezuela is not standing alone against the U.S. But the alliance with Iran, that might be the most strategic one of all. It's a partnership basically built from the ground up to defy U.S. pressure. They work together on evading sanctions, they help repair Venezuela's crumbling oil industry, but here's the part that's really setting off alarm bells in Washington. Their military pact. This includes jointly manufacturing Iranian drones on Venezuelan soil, and that places a potential military threat right in America's backyard.
Okay, Section 3, the region on edge. So we've got this high-stakes geopolitical chess game playing out. But what does it actually feel like on the ground? How does this affect the lives of ordinary people and the stability of the countries right next door throughout the Caribbean?
Well, the ripple effects are already being felt all across the region. You've got relations between Venezuela and its neighbors like Trinidad and Tobago just deteriorating. That's creating a lot of tension. At least 7 international airlines have canceled flights. And that doesn't just hurt tourism, it messes with vital supply chains. For the people who live there, these constant military exercises from both sides have created this atmosphere of just deep anxiety. They're left wondering if their island is going to be the next flashpoint.
And what's really interesting is that this U.S. military campaign is causing some serious diplomatic fractures. Key partners like Colombia are so concerned that these strikes violate international law that they've suspended all intelligence sharing with the U.S. Even the UK has paused some of its cooperation. It seems like Washington's aggressive stance might actually be isolating it, even from its closest allies.
And through all of this, we just can't forget the immense human costs that's the backdrop to this whole conflict. An estimated 8 million Venezuelans have already fled their country since 2015. That's created one of the largest refugee crises in the world, and it has already completely overwhelmed neighboring countries. Just imagine what a full-blown military conflict would do. It would almost certainly turn this massive flow of people into an unprecedented humanitarian catastrophe for the entire Caribbean.
So Section 4, bracing for impact. What we're looking at really is a geopolitical powder keg. You have a massive U.S. military presence conducting live-fire strikes on one side. On the other, you've got a defiant Venezuelan regime that's backed by the economic and military power of China, Russia, and Iran. And right in the middle of it all, an entire region just teetering on the edge.
And this incredibly volatile mix brings us to a final, deeply unsettling question. With so many global powers invested, with so many lives hanging in the balance, could this shadow war in the Caribbean actually be the spark that ignites a much wider, more devastating global conflict? That's the question on everyone's mind as the world holds its breath.